I believe everyone can see my screen.
Yep, looks good.
Okay, cool. So thank you so much, Nicole, and thank you everyone. I think we have about 6, 7 of us on the line today. So thank you so much for taking time out to be with us this evening. So my name is Michael Fu. I'm based in Singapore, and I'm a regional senior growth strategist from Alibaba Group, turned growth mindset coach, as well as founder of my own coaching practice, Positive Minds Coaching. So the fact that all of us are here tonight on this call tells me that at this point in time, perhaps career change and should I do it is something probably is important to you. And perhaps you're here tonight to look for specific answers that could actually help you to take the next step forward. So what I wanted to share with you this evening is that I want to share with you what ChatGPT could share with you. And that is real life stories of my personal learnings as well as advice that I've actually gotten throughout my career, which is like 25 years of my career. So for our session together this evening, I think let's make it, I think there's only about 8 to 10 of us. So let's make it interactive. So what I would encourage you is that along the way, if you find that the content resonates with you, just feel free to send some emojis. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop it into the chat box. Towards the end of this session, I think both Nicole and I will find some time to try to answer those questions as we go along. Okay. So let's without further ado, let's go into it. So what I'll be covering for this evening essentially are 4 key topics, which I'm going to break down into 2 separate sections. So for the first section, I want to share with you a little bit about my own career journey. And the idea behind this is that I wanted to set the context so that you can actually relate to what I'm going to share with you throughout the rest of this evening. So this is really about the context. And we're also going to take some time to take a look in terms of what are the different career mindsets and how that can actually influence the different phases in our career in terms of the action that we do as well as the choices that we make. So that will be the first part of the session for this evening. We'll take a short pause here to see if there's any question that we need to answer. And then we'll go into the second section of tonight's evening, which is really to answer some of the key questions that you may have, specifically around, is this the right time? Is this the right choice? And what if those 3 key questions around how you can actually strategize your own career shift. And towards the end, we'll spend about 10 to 15 minutes to answer some of the questions that you may have. So by the end of this session, I would like you to walk away with 3 key things. Hopefully, you can walk away with some fresh perspectives, key takeaways, as well as some of the tips and resources that I'm going to share with you along the rest of this evening that you can actually take away and apply it in your current context as well. Okay. So if that is what you're here for, please, I think I appreciate if you just type in a yes in the chat box so that I know that you are at the right place and this content resonates with you. Okay, so I'll just move along. And if there's any question, just feel free to put it into the chat box. Okay, so let me start off with my career journey. So my career journey itself, I think very thankful that I have a long journey in terms of my career-wise, and that has always been guided by a sense of curiosity and change. So I want to share with you what that really means. So this is how it started. So I started my career as a customer service officer in the call center. So my job is to stop people from canceling their mobile line. And I was terrible. So after 1.5 years, I was promoted to the position of team leader. So after 6 years, I was curious. So I wanted to find out about the other side of the business. So as a retention officer, my job is to retain the customers. So after 6 years, I was curious. I wanted to do customer acquisition. So what I did is, in my next role, I did a complete switch from retention to customer acquisition with 0 experience. So I take the plunge into my next role to do customer acquisition, and that was where I gained experience in terms of partnerships as well as managing key accounts. So that was a complete switch for me. And after 10 years, I realized that after 10 years of in the local business, looking at the country level business, I wanted to see the world outside of Singapore. So I'm really curious about the regional role, and I wanted to find out how does the world look like outside and beyond Singapore. And that's where I was very intentional in terms of taking my next step into a regional role. And at that point in time, I also started to have the career ambition and aspiration of one day I would like to work outside of Singapore. So when that opportunity came in 2010, I literally grabbed it to the extent that I gave up my promotion at that point in time. I can still remember I was exactly 25 days away from a promotion. So I gave that up. I grabbed it and only to realize that I actually jumped and landed myself in an environment that was rather toxic. And the hiring manager that brought me over to the international team actually left after 6 months I joined. So in a way, I was stranded for the next 2 years. And then one day in 2013, my dream came true. So what happened was there was this opportunity for an overseas posting, in this case to Jakarta in Indonesia with Telkomsel. So my boss came to me and asked me, Michael, is this something that you would like to explore? And of course, I grabbed it because again, that was my career aspiration to have the opportunity to work overseas. So I took the chance. I went overseas and I spent the next 4 years in Jakarta with Telkomsel. And along the way, I received another call. And this time it was from Lazada. At that point in time, after spending almost 17 years in the mobile industry, I wanted a change. So, and when that call came, I was very curious about what the e-commerce industry entails. And so I did the next change, which is the deliberate one. So you see the dotted line here, because that at that point in time, I gave up my promotion again for the second time to join Lazada. So I packed my bags from Indonesia, came back to Singapore. I joined Lazada in the regional role as a VP for partnership. That's how I started in 2017. And my time in Lazada lasted for almost 7 years. So after 7 years and three different roles, that journey came to a sudden stop sometime about this time last year where I was retrenched. So I was retrenched by Lazada this time last year. So that actually gave me the opportunity of starting my own business. And that's where I found my new purpose to start a new chapter. And that's where how I became a coach and how I actually started my own coaching practice, which is Positive Minds. So you might be wondering, why am I telling you all this? So the point that I'm trying to make here is that right now, if I look back uh, at my career journey, the past 23, 24 years, I think it turns out quite okay. But the point is, at each of these particular incidents, right, along the way, did those decisions look right? Was those timing look right? So based on that, what those experiences taught me is that the mindset that we bring into a career could have a profound impact on how we actually navigate our career. So over here, what I've done is I want to share with you this metaphor of a flight. So all of us have been on a flight, right? But the interesting thing is that if you consider on the flight, even though the journey is exactly the same, but the mind space of the passenger and the pilot is actually completely different. So in most cases, us as a passenger, we are very trusting in the sense that we always board a flight and we believe that things will be okay. That eventually, after X hours, we'll land our destination and the pilot will be in control and things will be okay. So we go on to a journey with a very trusting kind of mindset. The pilot, on the other hand, if you notice, is completely opposite. So the pilot is always vigilant. They are always looking far ahead to anticipate what could be some of the weather risk, what could be some of the turbulences. So they are always taking nothing for granted and they're always looking far ahead. And they are always proactive and being in control. So you could see that the mindset that we bring into our career could be very distinctly different. So now the question here is that with this in mind, so the mindset that you wear today, how can it then influence some of the choices that you can make and some of the actions that you can take in the different phases of your career, which I'm going to explain to you in the subsequent slides. Okay, so over the next three slides, I'm going to share with you different phases of our career. And I want to share with you some of the important advice that I received at each different stages as well. So the first phase that I pen out here is about the starting phase. So typically the starting phase is within the first 10 years. That's where most of us started. And this was the first piece of important advice which I received. What you do today, you won't be doing tomorrow. So what does this mean? Remember earlier on, I shared with you my career journey. I started in a call center. I was terrible. I didn't hit my KPI, and I was promoted 1.5 years later. So I could still remember very vividly that afternoon when I was told that I was promoted. When I received the letter from my supervisor, I asked him this very specific question: Why me? because I didn't even hit my KPI. The rest of my teammates were so much better than I am. So why did I get promoted as a team leader? So why me? And then this was his exact reply to me. He said, Michael, it's okay because it's okay that you suck at what you're doing today. Why? Because you won't be answering calls tomorrow. Because once you become a team leader, you won't be answering calls. So the fact that you're lousy at answering calls is okay because you have other skill sets and you have actually demonstrated that. So what does this actually mean? What I want to share with you is that in most cases, from my own experience and when I talk to young adults, as I was sharing with Nicole earlier on, at the moment I'm actually mentoring young adults, not just with Future Labs, but with other platforms in Singapore as well. So one of the very common observation which I saw is that very often when we start out, we tend to feel small. Sorry, we tend to feel small by our current role and our current KPI. So what does this mean is that when we first started out, because of the position that we're in, the role that we do, the title that we hold, we tend to feel small. We tend to feel that, oh, I can only focus on what I'm doing right now. I'm new, I'm junior, I'm small, so I don't have a voice. So what I wanted to share with you is that that is not true because what you do today, you won't be doing tomorrow. So what this means is that be courageous, be brave to find your own voice, to be heard. So the reason why I was promoted again was because I shared a piece of work improvement suggestion. Long story short is that we wanted to improve the performance of the team, while the rest of my teammates were asking for things like, can we have more marketing budget so that we can give out more freebies to the clients so that they won't cancel their line. I was looking at the situation from a completely different perspective. I was looking at how can we actually discourage the client to want to terminate their service with us to begin with. So it's about how can we then reduce the overall call volume of the call center. So you can see the approach is very different. And that actually helped me to stand out. And that actually helped me to get noticed, even though I wasn't doing a good job in terms of answering calls. So that's what I meant by don't feel small in terms of sharing your ideas and having a voice for yourself. That's point number one. Point number two, I think at this point, what I also encourage you is that just like the pilot, look forward. And I will encourage you to start looking at, to ask yourself, what would you like to do and what would you want to be doing 3 to 5 years from where you are right now? So for instance, today is 2024. So the question you should be asking yourself is, what do I want to be doing in 2027 and what would I want to be doing in 2029? So have a future looking vision of where do you see yourself. And by doing that, you can actually plan ahead and chart your career path according to where you want to be. The third point, I think this is also very important, especially if you're at this stage of a career, is to think about who you want to become and the kind of role that you want to play. So in general, there's two different paths that each of us can take. We can either be a specialist or we can be a manager. So the difference here is a specialist, as the name suggests, you are very good at what you're doing. And in most cases, you are a solo single contributor. So example of a specialist could be, say, for example, you're a doctor or you're a surgeon, for example. So you're very good in what you're doing and you don't necessarily manage a team. So you're a specialist and you are a single contributor. So that's one career path option. The other option whereby most people would take is the path of manager. So what does a manager do is, as the name suggests, as you progress in your career, you will start to have your own team. So you start to have people reporting to you. And what that means is that the skill set that you need to acquire is very different. Because as you progress and if you want to manage a team, and then the different skill set that comes in will include things like, for example, how do you motivate people? So how do you resolve team conflicts, for instance? How do you then improve on your interpersonal skills, your communication skills, your leadership skills? So those kind of skill set that you need to develop will be very different if you choose to be a specialist. And at this phase, within the first 10 years, I think that is a good starting point for you to start thinking which career path that you want to take. Okay, so this is for the first phase, which is the first 10 years. And then as we progress for the next phase, what I term as the experience phase. So this is usually the next 10 years from 10 to 20. And in most cases, this is also where most of us start to accelerate in our career, in a career path. And that's where you start to see almost like a hockey stick. And that's where you start to go up in terms of your career path. You progress a lot faster. And this is the second piece of advice that I received when I was in that phase. So it says, you can't stand out by thinking the same way. So what does this mean? So at this stage of a career, what you really wanted to do is to accelerate and to start to go into the leadership role, for instance, if you want to be a team manager. So now the question here is, then how do you make yourself stand out? So what it says here is that you can't expect to stand out when you're thinking or you're behaving exactly the same as the rest of your team members or the rest of your cohort. So the three learnings which I have from here, the first one, plan with a compass and not a map. So what does this mean? Again, if I were to draw back to my earlier experience in the international team, so I shared with you that in order for me to join the regional team, I actually gave up my promotion, right? I gave up my promotion. And at that point in time, I realized that I needed to do that because I know that to get into a regional role is not easy. And in most cases, it's very difficult to get a regional role. If it may sound ironic, but the truth is that it's very difficult to get into a regional role if you do not have any prior experience or you do not have a referral. So at that point in time, I took the chance. I went into it, even though the path ahead may not look very obvious to me at that point in time. So what it means here to plan with a compass and not a map is that a compass shows you the direction, right? It shows you where you want to go in terms of the direction, but it doesn't show you the path. So what I'm saying here is that as long as you know your direction, is okay, and sometimes the path may not necessarily be a direct route or a linear route. So what this means is that as long as you know where you want to go in terms of your career direction, it's okay for you to sometimes, I wouldn't say detour, but you can actually take an alternative route to get to where you want to be. So uh, your route of advance or your route forward may not necessarily look obvious, and it may not necessarily look direct, and that is okay, so long as you know the direction that you want to go. So that's the first point. The second point about not afraid to make smart risks is exactly like what I said. The reason why I gave up my promotion was because I knew that was a golden opportunity for me to go into the regional role. So if I missed that chance, then I was asking myself, when would the next chance come? So again, there's no right or wrong. It's just about making that calculated risk. Yes, I landed up in a place whereby it was a little bit toxic. But then again, the question here was, have I not been there, I wouldn't have the opportunity to go to Indonesia, where I spent the next 4 years. So you see what I'm driving at in terms of taking that smart risk. The last point kind of relate to the first point which I said, which is to stand up with ideas, be a thinker and not be a doer. So what does this mean? So what this means is that at this phase of a career, when you're at that 20 to 10 to 20 years bracket, it's very important for you to differentiate yourself based on your ideas. And the reason why I said that is because as you progress in your career, you will be expected to do more thinking, especially strategic thinking, and do less work. And that's the truth. And the reason why is because you will have a team. You will have junior people working with you to do that piece of work. But you need to guide them and you need to provide them the direction. So as you progress in your career, being a thinker will definitely set you apart from being a doer. And the reason behind that, again, I stress is that because as you progress in your career, you will be expected to think more, especially strategically, as opposed to doing more, because you will have a team. Okay, so that is for the second phase within the 10 to the 20 years bracket. I'm going, I can't really see the chat box at this point in time, but if there's any question, just feel free to drop in the chat box and we can address it towards the end of the section. Okay, so I just want to touch on this phase 3. So this is where I see this as the established stage. So this is where when you have more than 20 years of experience, And this advice is, I learned it through the hard way as well. And this is very true. So what it says here is, who you know matters, but who knows you will decide whether you progress or not. So you think about it, it's actually very true. So for instance, I came from Lazada, right? So Lazada is part of Alibaba Group. So I can tell everyone that I know Jack Ma because Jack Ma is the founder and the president of Alibaba Group. So I can say I can tell everybody I know Jack Ma. But the question here is, does Jack Ma even know that I existed? Does he even know me? Because if he doesn't know me, then it serves no purpose, right? If you know someone of a higher, let's say a more senior level, a CEO, a C level, or somebody who is more established than you, if you know that person, but that person doesn't know you, it serves zero purpose because it cannot value add to you. So what this means is that who knows you will make a big difference and a big impact, especially at this stage of a career. And I'll explain why. The first part is, okay, you need to demonstrate critical thinking. And that is what I meant by being curious about the how and the what. Again, what does this mean? And this is what I learned from my career as well, especially during my time in Lazada. So as you progress in your career, especially if you start to fall into the bracket of more than 20 years, one thing that you will notice is that the instruction that your boss gave you will increasingly become a lot more vague. So what does this mean? You will realize that as you progress in your career, the more senior you go, the instructions that you get from your boss will become shorter, shorter, and shorter. So what this means is that usually what you will get is the boss will just tell you what they want, the outcome. They'll just tell you like what they want, the outcome, but they will not tell you what you need to do or how you should do it. So basically, they will tell you what you need to deliver, but they will not tell you what you need to do and how you should do it. Why is that so? The reason is very simple. Because when you're at this level, at a more senior level, about 20 years, you are expected to think. You are not expected to be told what to do. You're expected to think and you're expected to know what to do. And if you do not know, you're supposed to find out. And that's where this critical thinking is really important. And that is where, if you're able to demonstrate that critical thinking, again, it sets you apart from the rest of the peers. And it will actually help you to get noticed, especially when you start to ask about the how. So how here is not about like how should I do it? It's more about like how does this impact the business? So how does this impact the business? And the what here is not, again, it's not like what should I be doing? The what here is more about like what are the implications? So based on this task, if I consider option A, option B, and option C, what are some of the implications? How does it affect my team? Not just my team, but adjacent team. And how does it impact the business as a whole? Which leads to the second point here, which is about being able to step up strategically and be able to see the bigger picture. And again, this is important because at this level, again, the choice of words I'm using here is expected. So you're not expected to only see your KPI and see your team. You are expected to see how you can contribute to the wider business, meaning how can you value add to your adjacent team and how can you work with the adjacent team? And overall, do you understand where the business is heading and what are some of these business challenges? So you're expected to be able to think that way. So if you're able to see that big picture, again, it helps you to get noticed. So this is what about again about how people get to know you. So the last point which I wanted to highlight is about, so after all this, and how can you very effectively increase your visibility? So there's this thing called personal branding. And to be honest, I regret that I didn't came to know about this concept of personal branding earlier. I only came to know about this concept of personal branding after I was retrenched from Lazada. Have I known this concept of personal branding, I would have started this long before I actually I left my role. And why this is important? This is important because when you have your personal branding within your job space, people know what you represent in terms of your values, in terms of your beliefs, your purpose, and how do you contribute back to your bigger the overall business. So when you have this personal branding, it becomes a very strong advantage that you can actually leverage on. So this is where, again, this is where when you have a very strong personal branding, this helps you to get noticed, and that's where people will start to know you as a person, and people can start to recall who you are as a person. And I just want to take this opportunity to share with you some of the experience. So along my journey, my career journey, I've had a lot of opportunities to sit in what we call uh, moderation exercise. So typically this happens during your annual appraisal. So your mid-year appraisal, your final year appraisal. So usually at each of this appraisal, your boss will put up a list of candidates that people want to put up for promotion, right? So when they have actually nominate this list of potential candidates for promotion, so what happened behind closed doors is that usually all the business unit heads will come together, and then they will quote unquote debate to see who will be deserved to put up for promotion, right? So they literally rank all the candidates from number 1 to number 20, for instance, and then they will debate to say who deserves more than the other person. And a lot of times, what I've observed when I was part of this moderation community is that a lot of time, the final person or the candidate that get promoted may not necessarily be the best candidate, or the one that has performed the best may not necessarily be. But in most cases, the person that was being promoted are the one that has got most supporters within that room itself. So what this means is that, say for instance, if Nico, say for example, using Nico as an example, so Nico is put up for promotion, right? So what happened behind closed door is that everybody will give their view in terms of whether they think, again, the keyword here is whether they think Nico is deserving to get that promotion. So how do they how do they derive this impression of whether Nicole is deserving for this promotion? Because if you think about it, the rest of the business head, they may not know exactly what you do on the day-to-day basis, right? So which means they do not know what you are doing. But based on their impression of you, they will be able to either say that you are deserving or you're not deserving. And when this happens, right? So if you have this personal branding and you have this support group, and that's where you can really step out and step up in terms of making yourself known within and to give yourself that better opportunity of career advancement. So at this point, in terms of this personal branding, I just wanted to give you this little challenge. You can actually jot this down and you can do it during your free time. So the first question is, can you describe yourself in 2 words? What you represent in 2 words? So that's the first question. The second question is, can you describe your purpose in your role in 7 words? Okay, so repeat. The first challenge is that describe yourself in 2 words. So for example, for me right now, my identity right now, I see myself as a mindset strategist. So 2 words. I see myself as a mindset strategist. So that's 2 words, who I am. So my purpose and my value at this point in time, if I go to describe myself in 7 words, is that I help millennials to find their I can. So I can is the opposite of I can't. So that is my value proposition. So I help millennials to find their I can. So likewise, ask yourself, what is your value and what is your purpose at this point in time? And try to describe that in 7 words. Okay? Okay, so I think with that, we have come to, we're going to take a pause here for the first part of my sharing, which is about the 3 different phases of our career. And let's just see whether, do they have any questions for now?
Yep, we have one question from Amira.
Yeah.
She
Okay.
asked, what does it mean by smart risk?
Okay, so thanks for the question, Amila. So I think you asked here, what does it mean by smart risk, and how to know if the risk is smart and worth it, especially if I'm doing a career change? Well, this is a fantastic question. Okay, so I'll try to answer the first part first, because the second part is exactly what we're going to cover in the part 2 of the sharing. Okay, so let me just answer the first part first. So what does it mean by a smart risk? Okay, a smart risk basically here means a calculated risk. So as the name suggests, a risk, there's definitely some element of you may not be able to, you may not get what you're looking for. But by taking a calculated risk, you can actually reduce that that chance of you missing out on what you wanted to do. So a lot of calculated risk here involve research, which I'm going to cover a little bit deeper on part 2 as well. So the short answer to your question here is to make a calculated risk. And I'll explain a little bit more in the second section, because that's exactly like what you're going to ask. If that's okay with you, Amira. So I'll go into a more detailed answer in the second part of this session. Okay, I think that probably, okay. How did, this is from Nazira, how did personal brand can contribute to career change and career development? Again, good question. So two things. A personal brand basically let people know who you are, what you represent, your values, what do you contribute, and basically people know who you are. So you stand out from the crowd. The first one, career change. How does it? Okay, when you have a personal branding, say for instance on LinkedIn. So if today you go to LinkedIn, right, you'll see that there's a lot of people talking about personal branding. There's a lot of coaches that teach you how to do personal branding on LinkedIn. So when you do your personal branding on LinkedIn, you definitely will stand out from the rest of the candidates on LinkedIn. So which means that, for instance, if today I'm a recruiter, say for example, I'm a recruiter from Google. I'm looking for potential candidates. So if you have a personal branding on LinkedIn, it will definitely make you stand out and make you more appealing to a recruiter. So that means that you expose yourself to better opportunities when you want to look for different jobs. And likewise, when you apply for a new role, the HR people from the new company will also go to LinkedIn and see your LinkedIn profile. So if you have done it up very nicely in terms of personal branding, again, that actually sets you apart from the rest of the people who have not done it. So that is in terms of career change. In terms of career development, I would say career development in a way when people know what you represent, what you're good at, what value that you bring, again, you attract opportunities from, say, for example, within the company itself. So business heads from other business units within the same company may know you. Say they may know that Nazira is A, B, and C. She represents this. She's done a good job. So that again open up opportunities for people to want to two things. One, to work with you by inviting you to join certain like cross-functional projects. Or the second thing is that they may even want you to be in their team. So it's common that bosses from adjacent units may ask you directly or indirectly, like, Nazira, I thought I have a new role in my team. I thought you're really suitable for this role, and I would love to have you in my team. Would you be open to explore that? So that, in short, is that when you have personal branding, you become a magnet. You attract opportunities towards you instead of you going out to hunt for them. Okay, so I hope that answers your question, Nazira. So if that answers your question, just give me a thumbs up in the chat so that I know that that answers your question. If not, then we can revisit it towards the end of the session. Okay, will that be okay? Right, thank you. Okay, so I think with that, I'll just move on to the next section, which I think this is important, where most of you will be curious in terms of some of the key questions here. Okay, so for the second part of this tonight's evening, I want to talk about the three very specific questions that you may have in mind about what you can do to strategize the next step into your career shift. So the very popular question that everybody asks is this the right time? So when should I change? Is this the right time? Okay, so the answer to that is that I would like to ask you, what does the right time looks like for you? What is right in your definition? Because all of us has got the definition of what is right. So what is right for me and what is right for Nicole could be totally different. And what is right for me and what is right for Mazira, it could be totally different. So I will invite you to first of all ask yourself, what does a right time looks like for you? What must happen for you to say that it's the right time? I think the important for us to also recognize is this part, the push and the pull factors. So before we make a change in terms of career switch, be it internal switch or getting an opportunity outside, I think it's important for us to understand why are we doing that. The push factors and the pull factors. Push factors could be like, for example, you don't like your boss. I don't like this team. Or my company is just too far from where I stay. I want to reduce the traveling time. This could be some of the push factors. The pull factors could be it's a bigger job, better money, a company that I admire, or it could even be that because my best friend works there. So it really up to you to gauge what is your push and what is your pull factor. And then the second question I think is important for you to assess is what are the opportunity costs of staying still, status quo? So ask yourself, if you don't take up this opportunity to change, what is the worst thing that can happen? So for me, again, if I relate back to the earlier story that I shared about going to the regional role, so I knew that that was a big opportunity cost because if I don't give up my promotion and go into regional role, I know that my chances of getting in the regional role is going to be very, very limited. And that's why I took that calculated risk. And same thing when I came back from Jakarta in Indonesia, back to join Lazada, I also knew that at that point in time, because I don't have any e-commerce experience. So for me to be able to join an e-commerce platform at like Lazada at that point in time at the regional role, it's going to be difficult if I don't take up that role if I don't seize that opportunity at the same time. Yeah. So that was, to me, that was the right time because that was what I wanted and the opportunity came. And I knew that if I don't make that switch, it's going to be a lot more difficult for me to make that switch subsequently. And I may end up spending years waiting for the same opportunity to come by. So that for me was the opportunity cost of if I don't do anything and I just stay put. I think the last one I was sharing with Nicole before we came online was it's really about trusting your instinct and to make it right. Because at the end of the day, the honest answer to this question is that there is no perfect time and there is no right time. So once you have made that decision, and once you have actually kind of like assessed some of these variables, trust your instinct and go out there and make it right. Make it right for you. Again, if I relate back to my earlier story, I said I went into the regional team only to realize that I stepped into a very toxic culture, and the person that hired me left 6 months after I joined. So I was stuck there for 2 years. But at that point in time, I wanted to make it right because I reminded myself that I gave up so much to be there. And I knew that the reason why I wanted to be there is because I want to build up my credentials to take on regional role and subsequently to have a chance to work overseas. And that's why I stayed there for the next 2 years and I make it right. And I was fortunate enough that that opportunity from Indonesia came 3 years later, and I was able to take on that role in Indonesia, right? So as far as right time is concerned, I would say that these are some of the things that you need to think about it. But really, the right time is defined by you. Nobody can tell you when it's the right time. It's really defined by you based on your instinct and the attitude of making it right. Okay, so that's about the right time. Okay, the other question that we have is this the right role? And what can I do about it? Okay, I mentioned this earlier on. I think it's very important for us to, first of all, clarify our career objectives, and that is to understand our why. So why are you attracted to this particular role? Why do you want to change? And why do you want to take up your role? Your why is very important because, again, earlier on, I spoke about the compass. So you need to know where your career direction is heading, the direction, right? So you need to know where you're heading. So once you know where you're heading, this become your why. So your why essentially is to bring you closer to your destination in the same direction. It may not be a one straight path, but over time, it'll bring you closer to where you want to be. So knowing your why and your career objective is very important. And the other thing is knowing yourself. So the question here is, how much do you know about yourself in terms of your personality and your strength? The good news is today there's a lot of very established tools and resources out there in the market whereby you can actually test and learn more about your own personality and your own strength through some of these profiling tools, which I'll share with you later on. So once you know your personality and your strength, then you can ask yourself, the role that I'm applying for, does it really optimize the strengths that I have? And is it a good fit to my personality? Again, to give you an example, if you're not good, or for instance, if you're not comfortable with data, if you're not comfortable with numbers, like you don't like to crunch numbers, you don't like to work with Excel, you don't like to analyze data, then a role in the e-commerce space could be challenging for you. because in the e-commerce space, you are expected and you're required to do a lot of data analysis and a lot of data numbers crunching. So if you're not comfortable in numbers, then e-commerce may not be the most ideal scenario for you. So likewise, if you are an introvert, for instance, so if you're an introvert, then you don't like to talk to people, or you find it awkward to introduce yourself and to talk to strangers, then it could be difficult for you to do a partnership role or a business development role, where you need to proactively put yourself out there to talk to strangers and to talk to partners. So this, just to give you an example. The other one, of course, is the team and the job fit. And this is a lot much easier. So this is about understanding the team and the job that you're applying for. So there's a lot of things that you can do in terms of research, speak to stakeholders who are familiar with the role. Say, for example, if it's within the same company, you can talk to people who are from that role, from that team, talk to them, understand the team culture, what's the KPI, what's the boss like, the expectation like, talk to them. If you are applying for a role that's outside of your current organization, you can look at Glassdoor. So Glassdoor actually gives you a very transparent rating in terms of what are some of the problems inside the company and what other people are saying from the company are saying about it. And of course, LinkedIn Learning, which I'll share with you in the next slide. Okay, so in the next few slides, I want to share with you, I won't spend too much time here, but I want to share with you a couple of things. Okay, so this is the personality profiling tools. These are some very established tools that you can use. I won't go through all the details. They ranges from free to chargeable. And just take note that each of this actually is meant to measure different things. But this will actually help you to get to know yourself better from a personality perspective. Okay, so this is, I'll share this with you, the personality tools. Likewise, we have, I put together 3 different strengths tools. So this strengths tool do the same thing. They tell you what's your strength. It ranges from free service like VIA, the free option, onto some which is chargeable at about 50 US, for example. So these are some of the things that you can do. And over here, you can see it actually measures different strengths. And with this, then you can better understand what are your competitive advantage and what are some of the things that you can leverage on when you apply for the next role. Okay, linking module, this is something that you can leverage on. I believe for now, this is only applicable if you have a subscription on LinkedIn, as in you have the paid subscription. This is just my own mocked up. So I want to share this with you. It's very simple. So what I've done here is that you go to this linking learning career journey. So what I've done here is, say, for example, I do this mock-up. I say that my ambition is to be a VP of business development. So when you key in this job title, it actually shows you a list of key skills that is related to this level, a VP level, and then this role, business development. So you list down a list of key skills and they provide you some of these short courses that help you to acquire or at least have some foundational knowledge of some of these key skills. So this is the other option that you can actually look at if you have a paid LinkedIn subscription that can actually help you get going. Okay. So the last one in terms of what ifs, setting yourself up for success. Okay, the thing here is about this what ifs. So the first thing is I mentioned here about managing your self-talk, negative biases. Okay, so the thing here is that we need to understand how our brain works. So our brain is actually hardwired to make us feel safe. It's not hardwired to make you feel successful. It's to make you feel safe, to protect you from any risk, and not to make you feel successful. And that is the reason why every time when we wanted to change something, to try something new, very naturally, we always end up having this negative bias, this self-talk about what if. We always think about what's the worst case that can happen. And it's very natural, and that is okay. So to answer this question, I think there are 2 things that we can do. First of all, after acknowledging that this negative self-talk is natural, the second thing is then how can we address this this little voice in our head that give you all the possible negative outcomes that that could be. So I'll say here, adopt a growth mindset, really be about curious, having this beginner mindset to learn about what this new role entails. As I mentioned earlier on in the linking learning, try to find out what are the key skills that entail in this new role and be curious to learn about some of these things. And the other thing which I think is extremely important is your unfair advantages. So all of us are unique and each of us have got your own distinct unfair advantages that sets you apart from the rest of the people, your teammates, the rest of the candidates. So I wanted to share this with you. So these are the 4 questions that you can actually start to ask yourself to have a sense of what is your unfair advantages. So I won't go through all this. I'll share this with you. So when you answer each of these questions, it will give you a more concrete sense on where are your strengths and why are people attracted to you. So these are your unfair advantages. So once you know these unfair advantages, right, think about how can you leverage them, because these are really your strengths and these are really what sets you apart. So think about your unfair advantages and leverage as much as possible. Okay, and when you do that, you can navigate the risk of what if, and you can also answer that, silence that little voice in your head about what ifs. Okay, so in summary, I just wanted to kind of like conclude what I've shared so far in terms of career shift, really to answer the question of should I do it? I think the 3 key things that you can walk away with that I want to leave it with you is number 1, as I said, have a very clear why. Understand why is motivating you to do the change, be it a new role, a new company. Understand really what is the why. Why are you doing it? And the next thing is to trust your compass. So once you've done your homework, I think you can actually trust your compass. The next thing is, I think it's very important, is aim to be prepared rather than to be right. Because at the end of the day, nobody can make a perfect decision. There's always some risk, especially when it involves change. So instead of trying to mitigate all the risks and to be perfect, I would rather you aim to be prepared. And this is important because when an opportunity comes and you are prepared, then you put yourself in a better position to seize that opportunity as compared to when you're not prepared. And the last part, as I just mentioned, unfair advantages. So this is a quote from Alex Hormozi. So Alex Hormozi is a very established serial entrepreneur from the US. And I love this quote when he said, "You don't fail. You either learn or you win." And I find this to be very true. As long as you've done your homework, you trust yourself, you leverage all the unfair advantages that you have, that the strengths that you have, the chances are you won't fail. You either learn or you win. And that is what I experienced for my own career journey as well. Okay, so with that, I think I've come to the end of at least to the end of the material. So this is where I love to connect with each of you. This is my profile. If you think that you'd like to take this conversation further, you can connect with me on Future Lab. So this is my profile on Future Lab. You can connect with me. If you're on LinkedIn, feel free to reach out to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can follow me on LinkedIn as well, where I share on weekly basis some of the tips in terms of managing growth mindset, something about career advice, career advancement as well. And the last one is you can actually visit my website to learn more about the work that I do. Okay. So with that, I noticed that we are just about 5 minutes shy from 7 p.m. So I think we're going to take a pause here and then we can see if there's any question that we can answer in the chat box.
Sounds good. Yes, if anybody have any questions, you can either put it in the chat box or you can unmute your mic. I can start. I actually have a question.
Oh, sure.
Thank you, Michael, for the detailed presentation and sharing your journey. I mean, I personally have learned a lot, and I can really relate some of the the thoughts that you were going through as you were thinking about changing careers. So my question was, I understand that it's very important to have a clear why, but how
Yes.
did you manage? Did you have one of those what if the grass is greener on the other side thoughts when you decided you switch your careers? And how do you manage it if you do?
Okay, so that there's thanks for the question, by the way, Nico. So there's this very popular saying, right? They say that the grass is not greener on the other side. The grass is greener on the side that you water it. So if you look at it, again, I think for me was I was okay. First of all, for me, my own experience was I was very curious. The 2 things that guided me was, first of all, I have a clear view on where I see myself, at least from a career journey perspective, 3 to 5 years down the road. So once I set the path, like for example, earlier on, I shared that for me, at that point in time, after the first 10 years, my ambition, as far as the career is concerned, is I wanted to experience working outside of Singapore. So that was a big dream. I want to be able to work outside of Singapore. So that is my North Star. And then with that North Star in mind, then the question here is how can I get myself closer or at least having a better position to have those opportunities for going overseas. So that's where I started to chart and started to understand like what are some of these roles that would probably have a greater opportunity for me to do regional. So one of the things that came to my mind was, and one of the things which I found out was that, for example, partnerships, which I'm very keen on, as well as business development, which I'm very curious about. So that actually become almost like a North Star, and that became my why. And along the way, I was very, very cautious about the reason of why I wanted to change. So I always ask myself this question, like why, what exactly that actually either pull me or push me? And the question that always helped me to answer that is, as I mentioned earlier on, is that what if I stay put? What's the worst thing that can happen if I stay put? So and so with that, I think again, for me, at least in my own experience, is it's less about the grass is greener on the other side. The reason why for that is because on the surface everything looks rosy, right? And if you look at a role, when you apply a role on LinkedIn or any other platform, the truth to that is there's only two reasons why the role is available. If you look at it, there's only two real reasons why that role is, or any role is available on LinkedIn or anywhere. The first reason is because the team is expanding. So they need more manpower to do that. So they're expanding. The second reason is because the person before you left. So then the question here is, why would the person, if this is so rosy, why would the person before you leave? So there's a reason why he or she leave, right? So then the question to me that is that it tells me on the other side of the fence, it may not necessarily always be rosy and green. It's really about understanding why you want to make a change. And once you make that decision, then just do the best you can and just stick to it. And again, falling back into your why to remind you, especially if that new journey start to feel a little bit tough and to feel a little bit difficult as you start on that. I'm not sure whether that answered your question, Nicole.
No, yeah, it did. Thanks for expanding that and answering the question. I do think it did, and I think it also really much relate back to what you shared earlier about trusting my instincts and my decisions and just making it right with it. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Michael. We have a question on the chat group. Amira was asking, how long do you think we should stay at one place before we start questioning our why? Very good question.
That's a good question, Amira. And the truth is that I think my age group and your age group could be very different. I'm 49 this year. So things during my time is probably quite different. So when do you think you should stay at one place before you start? Okay, so for me personally, the first telltale sign that I should start looking out is when I know that I'm very confident in what I'm doing. So this may sound ironic and it may sound counterintuitive, but the truth is for me, once I start to sense that I'm beginning to be very good in what I'm doing and I'm very confident in what I'm doing, it tells me that I'm actually going into my comfort zone. So it also tells me that I'm stopped growing. So because I'm really in a comfort zone, I'm very comfortable in what I'm doing, I'm confident in what I'm doing, and I'm good in what I'm doing. So for me, that is my first telltale sign that I need to start looking out because I'm really very comfortable in what I'm doing. And the risk of us is that when you allow ourselves to really sink in into the comfort zone, it becomes very, very difficult subsequently for you to get yourself out of there. Because as human beings, we want to be comfortable, right? So imagine, so if you allow yourself to kind of sink in into your comfort zone over a period of time, then it becomes very difficult for you to get out after that because it's so difficult for you to change after that. So if you ask me like what triggered for me, what triggered the initial thought that okay, this is the time for me to start look out, this is the time for me to start thinking about the next step. It is this sense that I'm going into my comfort zone. So that's for me. But if you ask me, like, can I pinpoint, like, specifically after 3 years, 4 years, you should start to look out? Then I don't have that answer for you. And the simple reason to that is because it's very personal. Because our context is very different and it's very personal, and nobody can tell you when is the right time other than yourself. And that's a fact. And I hope that answered your question, Mira. Oh, thank you. I hope that answered your question. Yeah. So for me, it was really the curiosity because I share that I'm kind of like a capo to a certain extent. So I'm always very curious about the other side of the fence. Like what I'm doing today, I'm very curious. Like what about the other side of it? I want to know what's the other side of it. So that also drives me to kind of find out things about the other role. And the good thing is that as you progress and over time, you get to be able to appreciate different aspect of the business, which will be very, very useful as you progress, especially in the third phase. When the later part of the second phase and the third phase, when you're at the maybe 15 to 25 years bracket. So that will be very, very useful.
Thanks for sharing that. That was very really helpful. Do anybody else have questions they would like to ask?
Okay. Is there any questions? Anybody else?
Okay, from the chat, no. Okay, if not, anyways, if anyone has any questions, feel free to schedule a one-on-one session, mentoring session with Michael on his Future Lab mentorship, or you can also connect with Michael on his LinkedIn profile and his personal page. With that being said, thank you so much, Michael, for your time today and for sharing about your advices and suggestions on career change and on answering all the common fears of should I do it, when should I do it, why should I do it. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you everybody for your time in joining us in this mentor class